let's go Detroit Lions. I think they're next, right?
Yep.
Is that it? Yeah. Detroit Lions 24, Green Bay Packers 14. Lions move to 7-1. Packers fall to 6-3. It's a weather game. Throw it out, Sam.
And they conquered the weather.
They conquered the weather.
As Dan Campbell said, we're built for this.
Dome team.
Built to play in any weather.
I mean, they are. Like the dome team thing, the dome helps your offensive stats over the course of time. Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. But a lot of times the dome team thing gets attached to teams who are built to win in such conditions. The Lions are built like play in the snow, play in the rain type of team, and they had a lot of success with this. Turning point in the game for me, though, the pick six, obviously, before the half. Jordan Love throws it to Kirby Joseph, 27-yard pick six with 42 seconds left in the half. That put the Lions up 17-3. And in this weather, with Jordan Love's mobility issues, with his injury, it was legitimately insurmountable.
Yeah, no, it was, a huge play, turned 10-3, and the Packers had the ball. Like, it was one of those, enough time on the clock to maybe we can get a drive and steal some points before the half. But, it might not amount to anything yet. But 10-3, the Packers trying to steal some points before the half to like 17-3, and now you're in a deep hole coming out of halftime. That was a real problem. Green Bay's defense couldn't stop the Lions' offense, which is a big problem. This was genuinely impressive, I think. That it wasn't just a weather game where it's like, it's outdoors, it's a little bit slippy. It was pissing rain for the entire game.
Very slippy.
Like Irish weather, right? Nobody wants to play in this. It's obnoxious. Jared Goff had a game like this in college where he couldn't handle a ball at all. Just kept flying out of his hands. And everyone's like, oh, look, 9-inch hands. That's going to be a problem at the next level. Can't go to a weather city. He couldn't go to Cleveland. Like, hands like that, not a chance.
I mentioned
good thing he went to Los Angeles, right?
I mentioned last night that I think it was 2019, in Washington, heavy rain game just like this. He's wearing the gloves.
Yeah.
And he put the ball just rested on his hand. He didn't even grip it. He just
shot-butted it out there.
It's a pie throw, Sam. You throw a pie. And he threw a big-time throw to Robert Woods. I said, I believe in Goff.
Yeah.
He can make these plays in the rain.
So
he threw the ball well.
He did. So he was out there in terrible rain with his two gloves, but he's still firing the ball around, like with zip on it down the tight red zone to Amon-Ra St. Brown for his touchdown. Really nice play by him. Sneaky little push-off.
The touchdown?
Yeah. Grabs the ball, like high points it, gets his feet in.
I saw people, sorry to interrupt again, but highlighting that route, that was a Goff Cooper Kupp invention, the fake return route into like a kind of like a fade. And Goff was just staring at him. He was just waiting for that to open up and put it in a really good spot.
Right.
It was a good play.
But yeah, so Goff looked really good. The running game is really difficult to contain. That combination of Sonic and Knuckles that they nicknamed themselves, Thunder and Lightning, whatever you want to call it, like Montgomery and Gibbs, it's such a good pairing because David Montgomery is a great, powerful inside runner, really good at maximizing yardage in tight spaces. And then Jahmyr Gibbs is so explosive that if there's any kind of crease there, he's just gone. And so that part is, as Dan Campbell says, like that's tailor-made for bad weather. Those two, like try stopping that. It's not easy. And when you're able to pass the ball efficiently, albeit not high volume, not deep down the field, if you can just deliver those passes accurately underneath in the bad weather, you are built for that kind of game.
I found a stat last night. I'm not even going to look it up, but I'll with stats, you can just kind of like get in the ballpark. So we'll ballpark it.
I don't think that's how stats work.
It's not, but the Lions running backs, I believe, have the highest EPA per play when they're running the ball. They're at least in the top 5.
Okay.
But the other teams in the top 5 all have a running quarterback. Right. So it's all Baltimore and Washington and Eagles, right? It's like teams that have that other option. And to me, there's a lot of things that are impressive about the Lions, their team building effort. I love all their players. I love how they play. But that's one of the most impressive things to me is that they have an old school running attack without the advantages of a new school offense. They don't have the built-in advantage of a running quarterback that immediately changes the math. Instead, they just win up front. And they have a good scheme, right? We've talked a lot about the last couple of years, a diverse running scheme. They run outside zone, they run inside, they run power counter, they do it all. But that's what I think is most impressive about Ben Johnson, his system, the offensive line, and the way Montgomery and Gibbs run that. They are so efficient and effective in a traditional running sense without the cheat code of having a quarterback taking pressure off the run game. So just wanted to highlight that again. Last week we talked about the disrespectful runs, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. They just run it up the gut and have success. And it's, again, another way to win for Detroit. And when you have uber efficient Jared Goff at the helm, not putting the ball in harm's way at all in this game, even more impressive because Love had that disastrous turnover, right? I mean, Goff did a really nice job of taking care of the ball in difficult conditions, and that's why Detroit won the game.
They're just swatting aside all these different hurdles that are thrown their way. I mean, the weather thing was at least notable because they've gone on this weird run where they hadn't played a weather game. Or not a weather game, hadn't played outdoors, right? They've only been in domes, and they only have like 2 of them this entire season. So it's at least worth bringing up that, hey, what happens if Detroit has to play outside in Green Bay in the piss and rain? Well, this is now their 3rd consecutive win in Green Bay at Lambeau. That's pretty impressive. They have also yet to be troubled by the loss of Aiden Hutchinson, who was the single most impressive source of pressure of any team in the NFL up until he got hurt. He's been out of the lineup. Okay, they then face a couple of teams that don't have great offensive lines, but then against the Packers, it still wasn't a problem. Like, Elim McNeil had some pressure, but generally this was not an overwhelming defensive pressure performance, and it didn't matter because they got the pick 6. They made enough plays, and their offense is so efficient. I mean, this team is just comfortably clearing every challenge that's thrown in their way and looking really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I started mentioning it last night. I mean, there were some very clean pockets for Jordan Love. The weather did help in that respect. There were some clean pockets, and Green Bay was having a tough time just completing a snap. Right, just shotgun snaps were.
So that's the thing that's worth bringing up. Like they were down. Josh Myers was out of the game. Their starting center, Elton Jenkins, the utility Swiss Army knife they have on that offensive line, he was in there playing center. Usually, you think, whether it's going to be a problem for the quarterback gripping, throwing the ball, the receivers catching it. It's also going to be a problem for a guy that's not used to snapping the ball, and suddenly the Green Bay can't rely on a snap getting back to the quarterback cleanly. I mean, they had consecutive plays where they couldn't get a clean snap. That was a real problem for them in this game. And I feel sorry for Elton Jenkins, who's a really good offensive lineman. That's just a really tough situation to be thrown into. That is one you probably don't think about until it's happening in front of you. Oh, no, the guy that's actually a fine backup center is not used to snapping the ball in pouring rain.
Yeah, so I thought that killed any rhythm because if you go back throw for throw, Jordan Love has the awful pick 6 before the half, and really impressive, by the way, by Kirby Joseph in a game where, again, the weather, it's tough to catch anything, just to catch a short pass and then take it to the house. Huge play for the Lions. But Love made some other really good throws. Jaden Reed caught the ball pretty well, but 6 drops total by the Packers. They couldn't find any rhythm, in part because of the rain. But
what did you make of the Brian Branch ejection?
So Brian Branch, what was the play again?
It was one of those plays we talked about before from like 1990.
Oh, that's right. He went helmet to helmet on
He came across, absolutely wrecked a guy on those hits that you can't make anymore. Clear helmet to helmet. And they're like, flag comes out, 15-yard penalty.
It was definitely a flag.
And then New York gets on the horn and is like, actually toss him out of the game.
I think that's just too subjective to do right there. Like, it's just way too subjective to do on the spot.
It was a clear, obvious penalty. I don't really understand why they determined it needed to get him turfed out of the game.
Yeah, so it's a clear helmet-to-helmet hit in a week where there was others.
Yes.
Right? There's other hits.
At least 2 of them.
And so I don't know how you elevate that to an ejection. You have an entire committee that does this as a job. Like, if you want to suspend him for a game, like, take some time. Go through the week.
Yeah.
Go look at other comparisons. Well, hey, we suspended Kareem Jackson last year. Let's compare hits. Let's do this on Tuesday instead of on the fly, few people in the booth being like, is this bad? Yeah, that's bad. Get him out of here. That's a little ridiculous.
Yeah,
again, this isn't college where they have targeting. If you get called for any targeting penalty,
right,
you're ejected. The threshold is targeting, and it doesn't matter how egregious it is. What the NFL's doing here is saying this is targeting, call it different in a different name in the NFL. This is targeting, but we think it's above this theoretical level that you must get ejected right now. That is a little absurd. And then he picked up another penalty on the way out complaining about it.
Yes.
So it was like 30 yards on one play. When the Packers were back, it was like 2nd and 19.
Right. Well, at one point, I think the Lions had only had 3 penalties or something in the game, and 2 of them were Branch on the same play.
He had the only 2 for a while, yeah.
It was, I think, a particularly stupid penalty.
Yeah, this isn't
because the ball
absolving him. It was a bad penalty. It was a dumb play.
So I would sort of say, in a week that had a few of these types of hits, where Brian Dawkins hits essentially, right? All of these belonged on Brian Dawkins' highlight reel, where from the early 2000s you'd be like, that's a great safety play. It no longer is. It's a penalty and has been for a while. But this one was unlike the other ones. This one, I think, was particularly avoidable, where it looked like, okay, the play hasn't been made. You can now ease up and don't have to deck the guy. Like he'd already dropped it by the time Branch decided to lower his head and deck the guy. So that, I think, is maybe the only difference. And again, this is one of those plays where I think the more you slow it down, the worse it looks. And that's where I think you get into problems, is like, once you're slow-mo replaying it 5 times, you're like, actually, look at the time between the ball going and him making this decision. That's egregious. Whereas if you're running at full speed, it's like, it's not that much time. Like
is this that? So Jordan Poyer.
Yeah.
Jordan Poyer's hit that put the Bills almost into field goal range. Was it that different?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
is it enough?
There's a difference, and the difference is timing, but it's like a split second, right? And I think it is enough for Brian Branch to be able to like maybe pull out of that hit a little bit, right? But it's not like when you run, it looks way worse when you compare those two in slow-mo than when you compare those two full speed, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I gotcha. While we're here, I was going to mention it in the Vikings-Colts game, but while we're here, a lot of times we say, what's a defender to do? And the best example of what a defender is to do is Kenny Moore last night on I think it was 3rd and long. TJ Hawkinson catches the ball on the flat, just coming off his knee injury. And Kenny Moore has a chance to hit him high and crush him above the shoulders, or hit him low, which you often do with a tight end. Kenny Moore had the most 2024 by the book tackle I've ever seen.
Form, technique.
Yeah, like he didn't hit him hard at all. He knew he was going to be short of the sticks by a mile. He picked him up, didn't spike him. He spun him around and gave him like a little mini spine buster. It was the best. It was awesome by Kenny Moore. And that's like the teach tape on how you don't get the penalty, you don't hurt anybody, you don't go too high, you don't go too low. It's tough to do.
It's also just it's just not an excuse.
It just felt like all of the rules coming through, and Kenny Moore with this perfect tackle on how to not even come close to picking up a penalty.
So, number one, what he's supposed to do is to aim about a foot lower for like center mass instead of the head or neck area. I mean, that's the main point, right? Is there's actually quite a large amount of space between like thighs and chest. Anywhere in here, right? There's a couple of feet's worth of target to hit. Anywhere in there is better. Instead, he ends up here somewhere, and that's a penalty. The other thing is, there are going to be plays where you literally can't take that shot anymore. And that's just the reality of the world. That's the same in other sports, where if you're late, it's a foul. What you're supposed to do is to either get there in time or don't take the shot. And that's just the reality. Like, that's not... Just because it becomes an impossible situation for the safety does not absolve him. Like, oh no, I'm late on this play, so my only recourse was to injure the guy, is not an excuse. That's not a reason to let it go. That's just, okay, if he's late, if he's that late to the play, if he's a half step behind the play so that he's arriving and the only thing left to him to do is to launch himself into the guy's head, you can no longer take that shot. You have to watch it happen because you missed the play.
Pretty much.
So I never bought that as an excuse. What is the guy to do? He's supposed to not make that hit.
Be there faster.
Be there faster, or don't make the hit. Those are your two options.
Yeah. We all agreed it was an awful hit.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't, I don't know if I would escalate it to an ejection.
Yeah. Look, if I don't agree with New York New York couldn't get on the phone to like fix an obvious face mask penalty that changed a game.
Their
right?
hands are tied. But their hands are tied.
But you can get on the phone and say, hey, that hit looked a little bit nastier than the last one we saw. Toss him out. That's silly.
And the thing about the suspension, like a suspension's a full game. This was 3/4 of a game.
Right.
But it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, take the time to sit through this, compare it to all other hits, and just make sure that you're suspending him a game and it's justified.
Particularly in a weekend where there's like 3 or 4 of those hits, right? Go through, watch them all side by side, and be absolutely certain that one was worse than the other 3. Because there's no way you could do that live, right? So by definition, they are making a call that they can't possibly be sure is legit until today, when they've like watched those 4 or whatever back to back and gone, yeah, that one's definitely worse. But there's no way they were doing that at the time live.
One thing we didn't mention in the Seattle, I knew there was something missing. Puka Nacua was thrown out.
Yeah,
in the Seattle Rams game for a punch, kind of a weak punch.
Yes.
They caught it, and then that's all in the rule book, right? I mean, that's where New York can step in, and you go back and you see people throwing punches.
And that's a fairly black and white one.
Yeah.
Did you throw a punch? Yes. Bye-bye.
All the more impressive for the Rams to pull that one off without Puka Nacua.
One stat that CBS had, the Detroit Lions have had more touchdowns, 28, than incompletions, 24, during their 6-game winning streak. They're the only team since 1940 with more touchdowns and incompletions over a 6-game span within a season.
Back when teams used to run 97 times a game and throw the ball 4 times.
Right.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, the Lions are – look, I really thought they blew that game against Tampa Bay in week 2, and it was like their unforced errors that let the Bucs beat them. I mean, they're that one performance away from being undefeated, and I think they've earned it all the way through. Mm-hmm. A good all-around team win by Detroit. Gutsy performance by Jordan Love. Have to say, dude's battling multiple injuries.
Yeah.
Through multiple injuries this season. There was a point where Malik Willis was warming up, thought he might go in, but Love, braved it. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to, like, he's being judged. It's kind of like the Justin Herbert year where he had the broken cartilage in his ribs and everyone just forgot about it like a week and a half into that. And like, Justin Herbert's not playing great this year.
We had to remind you
because the dude
week.
Can barely breathe. Like, he's out there battling through something that would have you lying in a bed for 3 weeks. Like, that, and he's doing that every week. Same thing with Malik Willis. That guy is battling through some injuries, and everyone's just like, well, he's out there, so let's judge him.
The other stat that we had to highlight was 30 straight completions between Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Really?
Per the Detroit Lions Twitter account. Yeah. 30 straight completions between both. It wasn't Josh Allen and Khalil Shakir on some kind of run like that?
Don't know.
Great.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.